Hello, hello. Welcome to this Thursday call. Today's family. I'm going to give a couple minutes for people to get on. But just give me a little bit here so that I can get this done. If you're new to the portal, welcome. I've seen a couple of new names this week, which I'm really excited about. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them up in the chat and or into the portal. There are plenty of people that are looking to help you out and serve you, so don't hesitate to reach out. As far as some of the red tape, Sovereign Summit registration was closed last Friday, so if you didn't get your ticket, sorry, better luck next year. But we did end up closing that out so that we can start getting the logistics all squared away. I did miss the March live event. We were doing a lot of internal or organizational changes in March, and so I didn't plan something in March. Specifically, I know that Deborah and Tish hosted a woman's blessing event yesterday, which I hope went really well for them.
It did.
Good. I'm glad. I want to talk to you about that a little bit.
Maybe it went well, and then, but that kind of was our March event. I mean, it was open to any woman who wanted to join. So,
okay. So
we had 12.
Hey, I didn't miss the
people.
mark thanks to my team.
No, not at all.
See, this is why you got to have a good team.
Absolutely.
So April's going to be kind of a busy month for me, but I want to do something else. Maybe an Axes and Nails. April actually is kind of the month for Axes and Nails because that's when I started it. The very first one back in the day was in April. But I have my birthday in April, and then I need my walkabout to finish my book in April. So timing wise, it's going to be interesting to get that all plugged in, but look forward to that. And I think that's all the red tape stuff. I think that's all the announcement stuff that we have for Heroes. But like I said, if you are new to the portal, I have seen a couple new names in there. If you are new to the portal and you're a little nervous to interact, maybe you're just kind of creeping in the background, feel free to introduce yourself. I've been thinking about adding to the Get Started an introduction system. So I've been working through that as well on the back end. So that might be coming out soon too, so that people can actually start getting to know each other a little bit better. But yeah, if you are creeping in the background, just kind of hanging out, just looking but not engaging, I highly encourage you to engage because that's really what this system is built for. All right. So today's family, I think I got my dates right. I could be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure today's family. Today has been a mad dash to the finish, and it's only 11 o'clock. So I've had a lot go on today. But last night, I went and hang out with my family. So it's kind of ironic that the epiphany came from hanging out with my family to then have the family call. Maybe not ironic, probably just the universe serving me. But on my way to my family's house, I'm on the freeway, it's pouring rain, and about 10 feet in front of me, I just see this Tesla just slide right by me and slam into the wall. And I pull over, throw my hazard lights on, grab my trauma bag, which I keep in the car, and offer aid. And she's completely fine, a little bit shaken, a little bit more than a little shaken. She started to walk into oncoming traffic, so I had to grab her. But she was good. We handed her off to EMS. Me and two other men stopped, and it was this kind of surreal moment because it's pouring rain, and it all kind of happens in slow motion because she just slides by me, hits the wall. Whole front end of the Tesla is crunched because there's no engine in the front. And so it's talking with her, and she kept saying over and over again, I have no idea what happened. And if you've never been in a hydroplane event, you lose all control. You legitimately, what happens is the traction that you would normally have between your tires and the road becomes lubricated by the water, and therefore no traction takes place, and you just slide in the direction of whatever your momentum is. Now, the thing with hydroplaning that most people fail at, and this is a little bit of a survival tip as well, is that they panic and overcorrect. So as soon as they start to lose control, they yank on the wheel, or they slam on the brakes, or they do something like that. And what that does is it changes the direction of your momentum. And that's why most times when people hydroplane, they lose control of the car and they slam into a wall. Now, for hydroplaning specifically, the best tip that you have is to point the wheels in the direction you were already heading or want to head, and coast. So take your foot off the gas, don't slam on the brakes, and just keep a stiff wheel until traction picks back up, because traction will pick back up. You will continue to get traction at some point because eventually that water will dissipate and you'll be able to get traction on the road again. So the epiphany that came by was I was telling this story to my mom and my dad and my sister, and we were having dinner, and we were kind of talking about relationships and you know, how things kind of get emotionally charged at times, and sometimes our conversations miss the mark, right? I once heard somebody say that in a relationship, when you communicate, whether it's platonic, romantic, business, whatever, you truly are communicating through a fog of war, because you have your lens, they have their lens, and everything in between just kind of gets it just misses the mark from time to time. And so I was sitting there and I was thinking about it. I was like, in reality, the hydroplane is a great analogy for relationships. And most people, especially fear-based people, especially people who have experienced trauma, especially people that have gone through narcissistic relationships where they've been used as control points or they've been manipulated, we get into this state of fearing the emotional hydroplane, the loss of control. And if you've ever been in a state where you've been manipulated, or you've had a relationship, whether that's familial, romantic, platonic, whatever, where you felt manipulated, or you were told you weren't allowed to experience reality the way you feel you were experiencing reality, or you were wrong for having boundaries, things of that nature, where you have zero control over the outcome of anything, and you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, you end up in that same experience as hydroplaning a car. And like hydroplaning a car, 95% of us do exactly what this woman did. We overcorrect. We feel out of control, so we need more control. We feel unheard, so we get louder, or we get more aggressive with our language. And so as I was sitting there and talking with my family, I had this epiphany of like, aha, okay, so if that's the case, then is it true that the tactics that are used to avoid physical hydroplaning in a vehicle, are those same things true for hydroplaning emotionally? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that they're exactly the same. Don't overcorrect. Don't correct anything. Coast. When we emotionally hydroplane, the symptoms of emotional hydroplaning feel like this: helplessness. They feel like a loss of control. They feel like we're being ignored. It feels like we are not heard. It feels like we're not being respected. We're not being valid. These are the feelings and emotions that take place when we are emotionally hydroplaning. And I'm very much guilty of this. And when I emotionally hydroplane, I yell. And this is a well-timed epiphany, because I recently was challenged with the idea of when you yell, you're weak. And I've been playing with that idea as well. It was like, okay, is yelling really weakness? And in most cases, it's true, yelling is weakness, but I don't think people, and I'm formulating a philosophy around this, and I'll share this another time, but it isn't necessarily a weakness. It's a fear response, fear of being unheard, fear of not being respected, fear of not being valid. So we yell to try and get our point across. And the same thing happens with emotionally hydroplaning. That is how I emotionally hydroplane. When I feel unheard, when I feel that somebody is not listening to me or respecting me, but I actually care about that person. And this is the key thing that I realized with myself, is like, if I don't care about you, I won't yell. I'll just let you walk right off a cliff. I don't care, because you don't matter to me. But if I care about you, yelling is a replacement for the natural consequence. And so I don't want the natural consequence of either a relationship ending, or me turning off the emotional trigger and walking away, or that person getting into dire straits. And so I yell in place of that natural consequence. Is it right? No, it's not right. But that is my mechanism, and that's something I'm trying to understand. So in this emotional hydroplaning, how do we avoid those feelings of being out of control, those feelings of being unheard, those feelings of being invalid, those feelings of not being respected in the moment? Because that's the hardest part, right? The knee jerk is in the moment. And it's just like physical hydroplaning. You need to relinquish that need to be heard, that need to be valid, that need to be respected in the moment. Because what is going to end up happening is eventually you're going to catch back up. And if you have overcorrected because you didn't relinquish that need to control, you're going to hit the wall. You're going to slam so freaking hard into that emotional wall that it's going to not only break that relationship, but it's also going to break you long term. So if you find yourself in that state of emotionally hydroplaning, how do you relinquish that control? But first step, take a breath. This is something that I had to learn. It's very difficult for me. Don't word vomit out of your need for control or that need to be heard. Don't get louder. Just take a breath. Just take a pause and coast. Put silence in there. This is something that a lot of people have a hard time with, and myself in my 20s especially, I have a hard time with silence. Awkward silences make me really weird. I've gotten a lot better about it. I'm not perfect, but I've gotten a lot better at it. But start inserting silence into those moments where you really feel out of control, or you feel manipulated, or you feel controlled, or you feel unheard or unrespected. Like, insert some silence. And in that silence, don't just sit there, right? Like, in that silence, actually think about what your next words are going to be. What are you feeling in that moment, and what do you need? And if the need is control, if the need is, which is generally speaking, it feels like the need is control, but it's generally more, I need you to hear me and agree with me. And so it comes across when we overcorrect as control. But in reality, I just want to feel heard. I want to feel valid. I want to feel part of this conversation. I want to feel like I'm viable, respected part of this conversation. And so if that's what you're feeling, then let them know that. Let them know, hey, like, I don't feel like you're hearing me. Right. And if they respond like a narcissist does, or like somebody who's in a control point, I do hear you, but you're ridiculous, you're this or whatever, you're crazy, which are language that is used to disempower you. Say, okay, well, I don't feel heard, so there's no point for this conversation. So until I feel heard, I'm not going to have this conversation. And relinquish the need to be heard, relinquish the need to be understood in that moment, and put a timer on your phone, put something on your calendar, put something somewhere that you will remember to go back and engage with that person on an even playing field once the hydroplane ends. Once you're back in control emotionally, once you're back in control of your logic, once you're not worried about hitting the wall, once you're not worried about all these other things. And you'll be surprised how fast things can be resolved with saying, listen, I felt like you weren't listening to me. Maybe you don't agree with me, but this is yada, 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 whatever the situation is. Most people, as long as they aren't a narcissist and a manipulator and a lot of evil people that want control, that actually want control, which are fairly rare. So a lot of people think that they're everywhere, but they're fairly rare. Most people who actually love and care for you and respect you are going to receive that and say, okay, I was a little over the top too. Like, I felt unheard, I felt hurt or whatever. And you'll find that you both pretty much felt the same experience, but you both were overcorrecting. You both were aiming for the wall. And so if you're feeling those symptoms that I said earlier, where you're really heightened and you're out of control and you're feeling manipulated or whatever, insert that silence and then make sure to go back and have that conversation. My recommendation, just for me, is do it within 24 hours. The way that my brain works is if I don't address it within 24 hours, it goes right out my brain, because I will start focusing on my responsibilities, other priorities. Like, it wasn't important enough, I didn't return to it. So for me, I've had to put it into my system that if that happens and we take a break and we take a pause and we don't talk, whether that's friend, business, or whatever, I have to go back within 8 to 10 hours so that it's still fresh in my brain of how I felt, what I wanted to say. And I've re-articulated it to be a position of understanding rather than fear, which is really what it comes down to, is fear of losing the relationship, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being unheard, fear of not being valid, fear of being called crazy, whatever it is. We have all these fears that are born from these places. And if we cannot relinquish our fear, right? We'll say in the same argument of the analogy of the hydroplane, if we can't relinquish our fear of loss of control, the fear of a worst case scenario, hitting the wall, we inevitably create a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because if we can't relinquish that fear, we actually create the conditions to hit the wall. And in the case of the analogy, we're the ones with our hands on the wheel. So if we hit the wall, it's because we cranked the wheel too hard. We're the ones in control of the gas and the brake. So whether we sped up too fast or we brake too hard, we're the ones that actually cause those things to happen. So if we can't relinquish that initial fear response of overcorrecting in the situation, then we are the manufacturers of our own doom. We're the manufacturers of our own negative outcome. And I've personally seen this in my relationships a lot, in all of my relationships, where when somebody gets fixated on a negative outcome, the negative outcome comes to fruition on their own hands because they start changing things, right? So, perfect example, a buddy of mine, he was very loyal to, and this is, I should say, acquaintance of mine. He's not really a buddy of mine because I don't really align with him ideologically, but him and his girl were going through some problems. She kept accusing him of cheating. He was never cheating. She kept going through his phone. She kept making these accusations. It was just a nightmare for him. And he refused to break up with her, and he ended up cheating. So does that absolve him of his responsibility? No, absolutely not. He is a man of his own choices. He should have been man enough to say, hey, this isn't working for me. Whatever the case was, whatever his outcome that he was looking for, he should have been responsible enough to make those decisions. But at the same time, if we go back even further, when he wasn't cheating, nobody wants to be accused of something that they're not doing, especially in a negative space, because it starts to create a dynamic where they're like, well, if I'm getting accused and in trouble for it anyway, I might as well just do it because I'm not even getting the reward for it. So is that the right way to think? Absolutely not. But this is how things come to be that way. So in that example, she was hydroplaning emotionally because she was fearing cheating so much that she was accusatory. She was going through his stuff. She was making like wild actions that were overcorrecting. She was overcorrecting, and it drove him to feel like he was being blamed for something. So he might as well go get that thing. He shouldn't have. He needs to control himself. That's why we're not really friends and more acquaintances. But that's a prime example of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And we see this a lot in relationships. We see this a lot in business as well, where we're so afraid of failure, or we're so afraid of not having a great product, or we're so afraid of doing something that sacrifices a value or what we measure as business, that we end up hurting ourselves because we start to overcorrect. We start to chase shiny pennies, right? And so this hydroplaning analogy, while is very critical for deepening relationships and realizing that we all do it and realizing what those mechanisms are, they go deeper than just family and relationships. They actually go into learning new skill sets. They go into, developing new hobbies or developing depth of character. Another good example of that is like people that want to get into doing art, but every time they start, it's not good enough. And so they never get good because they overcorrect. They just quit because they're like, oh, it's not good. It's like they're not willing to go through the time to just coast for a little while and not correct and just whatever it is. And then once traction picks back up, then carry forward. And so, I would challenge everybody this week, or if you're in a relationship that's not working or whatever, and you find yourself constantly in this frantic state, where you feel like you're kind of arguing on your heels all the time, or you feel unheard or unloved or unwanted or whatever, try and avoid the hydroplane by just inserting some silence and coasting for a bit. I understand, because I'm a very passionate person, how hard that is. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do. It's very difficult. But you'd be surprised how fast you can garner higher levels of respect, higher levels of understanding, higher levels of listening, by just pausing. And sometimes before you can be heard, you have to let other people feel heard as well, which is a good leadership tip as well. So if they're just venting, try not to be taking it personal. Let them vent. And in that, you may find that they'll pause and say, okay, that was excessive, or that was this, and they'll audit themselves. They'll course correct themselves because they themselves are emotionally hydroplaning. And so, very quick topic today, but that's what I wanted to talk about. That was the epiphany that I had last night talking with my parents. And I'm very guilty of this, especially when I don't feel respected with people I love. Like when it's business, work, people out in the world, like I don't emotionally hydroplane. I can keep control of that because I realize that I don't care about the natural consequences for them. But when it's people I care about, people I love, their opinion of me matters very much. And so I emotionally hydroplane thinking that I'm being misrepresented. And so I've had to correct that a lot over the last few months. Not with this language. I didn't realize that's what I was doing, but now that I have this language, it actually dovetails really well together.
It is, and you tapped on a piece that I want to pick up on, which is the venting. I think that's a good piece in relationships. A lot of people don't think about is you can preface a conversation of like, look, I just need to vent. Like, I just need to say these things because I'm emotionally hydroplaning, because I need to get this off of me. And starting it with, I just need to vent, so that that's your key word for each other of like, okay, I'm just going to listen. And I'm not going to like interject for the sake of like, well, no, you didn't, or no this, or no that, or whatever. Because you're just letting them vent. And sometimes I'm a firm believer of when you get that stuff out verbally and then you hear it yourself, you're like, one, the power goes away because it's not just bottled up in your head anymore. You actually like let it out. So in that letting out process, there's some relief there. But then there also becomes that piece of like, you heard yourself say it and you're like, is that really what I meant? Is that really what I thought? Like, you get to second audit it because you actually heard it. And so I think, I've tried to facilitate with people that I'm, working with or helping in some way. And that piece of like, let's just agree, this is venting. I just need to vent. And when we're done venting, if you need to vent back, we can vent back, and I'm going to be quiet and listen. And it helps give you some boundaries and parameters instead of like, well, you're not listening to me. Well, you're not listening to me. Okay, well then let's just stop and listen just to listen. And that practice piece, when you call it venting, you can put it in the parameters of why didn't you say anything? We're venting. You asked for space to vent. So I'm not going to respond because I'm not going to take anything personal. I'm just going to listen to see if I can help feedback to you what you said so that you can work it through. It's a good piece. So I think part of your emotional hydroplaning, that's a good tool to use, is that verbiage of, hey, can I just vent for a minute?
I think that's really critical as men too. Like, men were problem solvers. So when our women come to us and they're like complaining about stuff, our immediate reaction is, how do I solve this? Yeah. How do I get the complaint to go away? If you, as a man, if I care about this person, I don't want them to have to complain. So that piece, to your point of coming to, if you're a woman going to a man and you're like, hey, I'm just venting, that's a clue for the guy to go, oh, I'm not problem solving right now, so I'm just going to hang back and let you get it out. Otherwise, I'm going to take it as these are things I need to fix, right? These are my honeydew list items that you've been holding on to, and I don't want you to resent me for it, so I'm going to go fix it, right? Like, right. But that may be not the way that it's intended or presented, but that's how we're going to receive it if we don't have that key identifying marker of like, oh, this is a vent session, right? And I think that's something that I've talked about with, like, in my confidence coaching a lot with men in their relationships. I've always said, like, as a man with my person, I don't want her to vent to me. Go get girls to vent to. That takes away from my role. My role is to fix your problem. So if you come and you want to just sit down and have a gossip session with your man, that's not what I'm here for. That's my personal choice, because I know myself. Even if you tell me I'm venting, if it gets to a point where it's something really bad, I'm still going to want to fix it, because I can't just sit back and listen while you're like basically unveiling all this darkness you're going through and not immediately want to help you. That is where I've always said that men need other men to talk to and women need other women to talk to, because there's a certain disconnect there in the mechanism of the relationship where, like, I can vent to you without feeling, or I can be vented to without feeling the need to go and solve it for them. And so different relationships work differently, right? I know a lot of guys who they vent to their women and their women take it very well, and vice versa. I'm just not wired that way. If my girl comes to me and says, hey, I just need a vent, she knows what the line is going to be. Like, yes, you can vent, totally. But if it comes down to you browbeating me in your vent session, like, I'm going to take it personally no matter what you say. I don't care if you're venting or not.
Sure. I mean, it's not a safe space to browbeat, right?
Right.
That's not what venting is for. Venting is what is my issue? Well, I have a problem with this, and I just need to talk this through. Or this is how I feel when these things are happening. And it's not that, let's just say like toothbrush in the sink or something, it's like, This really frustrates me. I'm tired of it. I just need to vent and get it off my chest because it's really not a big deal, but I just need to vent it because it's building up in me. So yes, there's some pieces there that you could work with of listening to that and being a good partner for each other, but not responding back to it like, well, yeah, well, your toothbrush is in the sink, but your hair's in the sink. And so
Yeah.
that's not what that's for. Right.
Yeah.
But to be able to vent. And I would say to both the men and women, absolutely you need circle of people. Men need to talk, men talk to with other men and however that works. And women need to have women talk with women. Coming fresh from our blessing way yesterday, like there were 12 women in there, and like half of us, we were from two different camps basically, so 6 people knew each other, 6 people didn't know each other, and so it was just a piece of like we can just all be in the same boat. Like we all just agreed for those 2 hours we were just sisters, and we all had issues with our husbands, and we all had issues with our kids, and we're all exhausted, and we're all whatever, and at the end we were like, oh my god, like that was awesome, like I totally feel better, and then we're going to go home and like go back to relationships and whatever that is. So I agree that some of that venting that people need to do respectively for women and for men, but I do feel that there's some piece of venting to your partner. Like there does need to be some pieces of, and it's not that it's a, I agree, it doesn't need to be a bashing session, but it does need to be a little bit of like, hey, this is my struggle, because like in conversations you and I have had, it's different perspective. I can go talk to my women friends and we're all going to have women same perspectives. You bring it to a guy and you get your guy perspective, or to your partner and your partner's perspective, and then it's like, oh, well, because I trust you a little more, excuse me, a little more than my women or my men, because it's actual relationship of some sort with you. Then it's that piece of like, okay, I can receive that without it being a negative, because it is coming from an opposite, so it can feel like a negative, even though it's not a negative. It's just a different perspective of like, well, yeah, you could have just used this particular tool, and that thing would have been fixed super easy. And you're like, oh, I never thought of that. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, this is something that I always talk about, and I know I've talked to you and Matt about it, Tish, a lot, is like humans are so nuanced, but in the world of like social media and coaching groups and community and everything, everybody wants the don't do it that way, right? Like they want the black and white deal, right? But the reality is, to your point, like everybody's nuanced. So like every relationship is going to be different. How you receive things is going to be different. Are you more equipped to take it from a woman than you are from a man, as far as like constructive feedback, right?
yeah,
And people can get on their high horse and be like, oh, well, that's feminist and that's misogyny and all this stuff. But the reality is none of it matters if you can't receive it. Like
right,
it doesn't matter. So you can call it whatever you want and label it whatever you want. The point of being sovereign is taking on the responsibility of identifying your hurdles, not as reasons, right? Like
right,
I've talked about in the past, like don't conflate your why with your what, right? You may have these hurdles, like, I think right now a lot of people are really on this neurodivergent kick and, all this stuff about like my brain works differently. It's like, that's great. You're still responsible for getting an outcome that is empowering and positive. And so whether you have those hurdles or not, you need to find out how to apply those in a way that functions for you. Agnostic of outside judgments, agnostic of social pressures, all that stuff is like, so like emotional hydroplaning, the tips that I'm giving, once you take those tips and go and apply it, maybe it isn't, hey, I'm just venting. Maybe it's a safe word like tree star or something. And now they know, right? Like it's the same concept, but it's functioning differently for you specifically in your nuanced space. And the same thing with how you like the threshold of venting that you can take. Like I have a very limited threshold because I care a lot about delivering and serving my woman. So depending on how much she's coming to me with, I only have a certain threshold. Now that could be good, bad, or indifferent, but that's knowledge of myself that I know that that's how I work. So I'm very clear and concise about my language of like, I can definitely listen to this and I can definitely help let you just vent and respect that space for you. But your responsibility is to understand me just as much and realize that whether I like it or not, here's his threshold. So I can ignore that and go above that threshold and fight him on that threshold, creating additional chaos. Or I can realize I can vent about these things and I have to take these to my other people over here. I can talk and discuss these things, but for this particular space, that makes it very difficult. And so I got to take it over here. And that's playing in the nuance. And that's why I'm not a big proponent of making your partner your everything. A lot of people in today's world, they believe that your partner is your everything. And the reality is nobody is anybody's everything ever, right? Your boss is not also all of these other things. Your best friend is not also all these things. Your partner should not be all of these things, because it places too much of a responsibility on a single person to manage all of it and all of the nuances and idiosyncrasies therein. You just have to learn each other and learn what they're good at and lean toward those strengths and learn what they're bad at, and not chastise them for what they're bad at, but finding a way to make that work for you in that nuanced space, right? Like,
I would take that a little further too and be like, you should be all of everything for yourself.
yes.
Because if you are all of everything for yourself, and I don't mean that in a space which is a learning process I've gone through of like being too far into my masculine, like I don't need anybody. I do, right? But I can do for myself. And knowing that I can do for myself, or I have resources, or I have tool sets, or I have the abilities to take care of myself, because I have that skill set, I can then soften into a partner and receive it both ways, because then it's like, okay, well, I know I need this thing, but I know that that person who I've chosen to be with is then they can do that thing. So let them do that thing for me, even though I can do it myself. So I think that's a key piece. Like you're right, nobody is anybody's everything, except that you should be your own everything, because then you can share and receive whatever parts you need or whatever parts your partner needs.
And I agree, because if you look at humans in general, there's 99% of the things that we fixate on is our fears, right? So if you are your own everything, then you are more easily able to lean on somebody else, because worst case, right? Like there's that old adage, birds don't trust the branch. They don't fear that falling because they trust the branch. They don't fear falling because they trust their own wings. And it's that very same thing when you talk about being your own everything. When you develop a capacity to understand and know whether they do it or not, I could do it, then you don't have to worry as much about controlling the way they do it, or having them do it, or relinquishing that control. Because at the end of the day, you're in control of you and you know what you're capable of. And therefore you can flow from a place of courage rather than a place of fear. And this, especially in today's society, where we have a lot of conflicting ideologies and we have a lot of conflicting messages out there. And of course, here at Heroes, we're very big on the traditional role structures. When you're in society in today's world, we have a conflicting power structure, because society says women should follow the same power structure men have, which is success, money, competency, right? But they're not wired for that power structure. They're wired for softness and compassion and nurturing and things like that. And so when trying to find your way out of a hardened feminine into a softened feminine, you have very much a need for a very strong, confident masculine archetype, because if they themselves are not confident, then you will not feel courage to lean into them. And when you have social hierarchies that we have today that are arguing against women leveraging their natural archetypal power structure, which is the femininity, the nurturing, the compassion, the group thing you guys did yesterday, everybody was timid because there was this almost pressure to be perfect, right? There's this pressure from women to women that is like, well, if I'm not what socially I need to be, then I'm going to be judged and I'm going to be looked down less as, and I need to level up to that. Well, that's a male hierarchy structure. I have to deliver to be valued, right? And women, much like children, should be loved unconditionally. However, they are responsible for a specific level of nurturing and compassion and things like that. So if you show up to a women's group thing and you don't trust yourself, so you close yourself off, you're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of being ostracized because you are not open, which is the measurement most women find their power in, is openness, a nurturing, welcoming warmth, right? That's what men look to in their wives and their women. That's what women look to in a group of friends. I want to be welcomed and unjudged. Right? Well, if you're scared because you haven't become your everything and you're worried that they may not deliver on what you need from them, you're going to close up and you're going to ensure that you never get it.
Right.
Right. And so to your point, being your everything does not mean you're good at everything. It does not mean that you can fulfill all your own needs. What it means is you can function effectively, even if you don't get that externally. And I
it's a
learned
confidence piece.
Right.
I think, right? So, I mean, I feel it's a confidence piece of knowing that you can do it gives you the ability to not have to. Because I can find that person, I can ask for help for that. Not because I can't do it and so I'm timid and I'm not going to ask for help because I'm like, I don't know, like I know I could. I have a light bulb in my room that needs to be changed, right? I can do it. I just need a taller ladder because I'm short. I would like not to. So I asked somebody to help me. But I could do it, right? But then that's me softening into the piece of like, okay, I could do it, but I'm going to be scared on the ladder. It's taller than I want to be. Da, 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 da. It's a weird light bulb. And then instead, I could be like, nope, I have people around me that I can ask to do it, and I will let them do that. And so that's that softness piece that comes into that, and that ownership of like being my own best person. Yes, I could certainly do it. It's not that big a deal. It's only a couple feet taller than I am, so it's not terrible.
And that
but it's nice
confidence
to be
also
able to
comes
soften
with
into somebody.
that fear of being a burden too, right? Like when we're not confident, we make the assumption that asking for help is a burden on others.
Right.
But when we're confident, we realize that I'm asking you and I'm letting you serve me the same way that I would hope you would let me serve you.
Correct.
Right. Like, and
you should be serving the other person in those ways.
Exactly. And so there's this kind of misnomer where it's like, I want to be asked so that I can serve you because that's what I want to do for you because that's how I show my love for you. But I'm not going to ask you because that would make me a burden. It's like you're contradicting yourself. If you feel that same way that, hey, I want to be asked to help you because I want you to be able to lean on me, then not giving that other person that opportunity to feel the same way, it's a mismatch. And so,
well, and it creates the environment too of like, you're going to listen to that and hear that. So you're going to perceive that of like, hey, there's been a couple of things she could have asked me, but she didn't ask me. So she doesn't really want it. So then when they come to, like, when you're thinking of asking for something, you're like, well, but they never do. So then like,
maybe I am want to
ask, right? Or maybe I don't want to ask for something because then they don't want to say like that self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing, or the hydroplaning of the relationship because you guys are you're never letting off the brakes enough to settle back into the water.
Yeah.
You're just skidding across the top being like, oh, okay, well, take back, let the car settle, get some traction, and then move forward.
Yep, 100%. And that's the other thing too that I see a lot in controlled relationships on one side or the other is they're confident that they can do it and they're half-assing it. So they go and they're like, I'm going to ask for your help because I know I'm capable of doing it, but they take it a step further and like, but if you don't do it the way I want you to do it, then it's a problem. It's like, no. If you're confident you can do it, but you're letting them help you, then you have to also allow them to do it their way.
Their way, even if it's half of what you would have wanted, you do it. And then you don't go back and fix it right in front of them.
Right.
Well, I asked you to, take out the trash. Okay, well, you took out the trash, but you didn't put the bag back in the can in a timely enough manner. Well, so now I'm mad at you because you didn't do the bag. Well, how about thank you that I took the trash out? And then I'm sorry, I forgot to put the bag in. Or how about they took the trash out and then you just put the bag in because you noticed it. And so now you're working together.
Yeah, now it's a support model. And this is where I think we struggle a lot, right? And I'm going to use this example because I saw this video of this woman talking about don't refold the towels.
Yes.
Right.
Oh my God.
It's such a great video because it's such it's such a commonplace thing that many women complain about their husbands. Like he doesn't know how to fold the towels right.
Right.
So then the guy, he thinks he's helping and he folds the towels the way he thinks folding towels should be. And instead of going to him and saying, actually, I like them folded this way, or even better, just thanks for folding the towels.
Thank you.
They get pissed off that the towels are folded the wrong way, which in the grand scheme of things is not really that big of a deal.
matter.
And then
Yeah.
and then ironically also complaining that he never helps. It's like, okay, but when he
Right.
does help, you negatively
You
reinforce it,
bash him.
which makes him
Yep.
never want to help again.
Absolutely.
So there's this system of, like, again, hydroplaning example, like, you got to relinquish control if you want that, if you want to catch traction. So
Right.
if the outcome that you're looking for is him helping with the laundry, but he doesn't quite do it right, you need to reward the behavior you want. And guys, honestly, most men, are very, very open to criticisms as long as they're respectful, right? Because we're like puppies. We want the kudos. We want the pat on the head and the treat, right? So if you have a man that doesn't do laundry and he does laundry, but he doesn't do it right with you, like, do what you do for puppies and babies, clap and cheer and go over the top and be like, babe, I love that you did the laundry. That was so awesome. Thank you so much. Don't then go, but I hate that you folded it this way, or like what a lot of women that I've seen in those specific examples do is they're just like, oh, you couldn't even fold the towels right. And guys like, well, fuck you then.
Well,
I ain't doing the laundry
we've
ever.
argued, right. So we've argued about this before, discussed it, in that, as women, we save those things. It's not meant, we're not saving it on purpose as a bad thing, but we just store that. That's data that gets put in a file in the back. Oh my God, that he didn't do the towels right. Oh my God, he didn't put a bag back in when he did the trash. So then when it's our breaking point, because we're hydroplaning and we haven't vented to anybody over silly things, right? Or not, I mean, not that they're silly, but little things. They haven't vented over the little things. And then some major thing comes up, whatever, something happens. And then all of a sudden the women are like, oh my God, and you can't even fold the towels right. Well, that has nothing to do with, nor was it a big enough deal that you couldn't have brought it up at the time, but now you've saved it up. And because you broke, you're now throwing that out because you don't have control of yourself and your emotions. Um, but yeah, it's we put a post of this in the portal the other day too, about like, when you're asking for help, be supportive, pick the battle. Like, does it matter really, like, how the towels get folded? And if it does matter, because taking from a girl moment here of like, well, we want the guest towels, we want the decorative towels to be pretty. Okay, cool, then you fix that towel.
Yeah.
I'm going to fix that towel and make sure that towel, and I'm going to tell my dude, like, don't touch that towel, that's
Yeah.
the pretty towel. But under the sink where all the other towels are, what does it matter if it's folded to the left and in
And
three
as
quarters
men,
and
we're
thirds?
troglodytes. So if you literally go to your man and go, hey, this is the pretty towel, don't touch it, we're gonna go, okay, yeah, because I am a troglodyte and I don't want to fuck it up. Like, because I don't
I like
care.
pretty towel. She likes pretty towel. I'll say pretty towel.
Right. And going to that hydroplaning piece too, like, and going a little bit more to the, like, the military side of the house, like, if you store that up and you don't vent it out and then you're in a big argument and then you're like, and you don't know how to fold the fucking towels right or whatever, right? The problem is, even if you won that battle, you just lost your war.
Yeah.
Because what you've done is you've sacrificed to win that victory, that one victory, and you've sacrificed the war of he's never going to do laundry again. He's never going to fold towels again.
Right.
Just so you can win that one battle that you're pissed off about, again, proverbially hitting the wall. When had you just let that slide by, you would have caught traction again. And now you would have been focused on the one topic that you were actually trying to win that battle of. Maybe, you don't treat me, you don't make me feel pretty anymore. Whatever the big topic is that you just had to insert that in to add, weight to your words or whatever. Like, you got to think, and this is how men are wired, and this is why men and women struggle to understand each other, is we're outcome driven, right? Women are emotionally driven. And this has been proven in many, many studies across the board in clinical psychology for the past 100 years. But if you go to a man and you're like, you're not doing this, and here's the data that supports it, most men are going to go, okay, fair. Like, fuck, that sucks. Check to the ego. That hurts, but fair. But even if a man goes to a woman and says, hey, here's all the data, they're like, yeah, but you don't make me feel this way. And guys are like, so what? The data, this. And it's like, but you don't make me feel this way. And we don't understand. We literally can't, I've gone through this a lot in past relationships. Like, I literally can't understand. Like, there's this scene from Mad Men, which is like 1950s. And the girl's like, all you do is take my ideas. He's like, that's your job. That's what you get paid for. She's like, yeah, but that's why you never once said thank you. And he's like, that's what the money's for. but she never felt appreciated. And he is like, that's what the money is there to do, is make you feel appreciated, because they're wired differently. Right. And that's a very pivotal illustration, because that's where most relationships break down. A woman wants to feel a certain way, and men just want the outcome. So if a man can see the outcome, he's content. Right. If a woman can see the outcome but doesn't feel the outcome, she's not content. It's not going to work. And where that becomes a problem is, like, and I've talked about this before, women want to feel heard and seen, and that's how they view love. Men want to be respected, and that's how they view love. If your words and actions do not match respect for a man, then you don't love him in his mind. And it's insane. But as a man, if you're not constantly telling your woman and making her feel special and making her feel loved and making her feel appreciated for the daily tasks, right? Like every day, if she's doing the dishes, for the next 50 years, say thank you for doing the dishes. Every fucking time. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Right. And she may blow it off 9 times out of 10, but one day she's going to be talking to her girls and they're going to be like, he just doesn't appreciate me. It's like, well, my man tells me thank you for doing the dishes daily and gives me a kiss. And it's the little things like that women are going to remember. Whereas the guys, it's the big things. When I say something, I want you to respect and trust my decision, my logic, things like that. That's how we're wired. And so what ends up happening is we overlook the daily tasks with our women to make them feel special and beautiful and, like, you know, all those things. And it's one of those things where it's such a simple thing. It's such a simple thing. It's not easy, especially if you've gone through trauma and narcissism and all this stuff, but it is a very simple thing, right? Like at the end of it, learn your partner, learn them, like literally learn them. What makes them light up? What makes them feel tingly and gives them that weird smile that they don't want to give you, but they give you, right? Like that sheepish, cheesy smile where they're like, I don't want to smile because I feel stupid. Like, how do you make them have that? You find out what that is and you just replicate that smile all the time. And I can guarantee your relationship's gonna be 100% better.
Right.
And that goes both sides, like women to men, men to women. Because I think a lot of times, again, like I said earlier, with social media and everything, we want to boil everything down to these very, all right, just have sex with your man and he'll be happy. Well, I know a lot of guys that get a lot of sex and they're not happy because they're treated like shit. Right. So it's not so black and white. And the same thing with women. Like, just tell your woman she's pretty. Like, I know guys that tell their women they're pretty all the time and she's just miserable because he doesn't take her on dates. He doesn't help her around the house. He doesn't this, and this, right? They got a list. So if you're not learning your specific partner, and this is one of my biggest pet peeves of the current society and relationships, is it used to be you and your woman, you and your man against the world.
Right.
Now it's you in the world against your man, or you in the world against your woman, because everybody's sitting there doing that Instagram compare shit. Right. And it's really subverted the nuclear family. It's really subverted relationship strength. And it's why divorce rates are in the 70s percentile, because nobody is dating each other.
They're dating
the world,
social media. Yeah.
Right. They're dating the world and then bringing it home and going, well, why can't you be like Steve? Why can't you be like Becky?
Right.
Why can't you, like, that's not supportive of conducive to a healthy relationship at all.
Right.
You should be so like, cool, Steve and Becky have it this way. I have my things that I'm very proud of. That is mine.
And this is how we're going. But to that of like the social media piece, in that, you know, we're not dating each other, but we're also not in our support circles either, or we're in our support circles online. And it's not the same thing as 12 women sitting around the kitchen table doing a task and talking, like just talking.
Yeah.
And that support piece. And it's like we could have texted and said the same things. You know, we had the proverbial, like, who are you? What do you do? What's your story? A little bit. And then, you know, talking about, for us, we were talking about kids, and we were making flowers for our hair. And so we were talking about the creativity process and all of it. We could have texted all of that. We would have had the same conversation on text, but it would never have been the same thing as actually being with each other, being
there's
in
no
the
flow
moment
of energy that way.
Yeah, there's no share. And so same thing with, you know, with your partner, dating your partner. Like, what did it take to get the partner in the first place? You should be repeating that all the time. Yep. You know, and not that it has to be the expense of like, well, I took him out to dinner all the time and I took him to flowers, Okay, cool. I get it. You spent some money to court them. Cool. But keep courting them. You want to be courted, they want to be courted. Find ways to do it that fit within your family's budgets or your family's protocols or whatever. Um but that part should never stop. I mean, I have a client, they're in their 70s and they're like the most adorable couple ever. I hope that I have a relationship someday like theirs because there's a mutual respect, there's a mutual love, there's still the, brushing by each other and a tap on the shoulder or, a private little smile that I feel bad when I catch it because I'm like, oh shit, that was their moment. But that doesn't happen so much anymore. It doesn't even happen in the young people anymore, and you're like, I mean, how many times do people want to sit on a park bench and just, walk by and watch people that are, you catch moments of love. That's what makes the world a better place. Share love, be love, watch other people's love. Compared to that, if you have to compare to something, find those moments when you can, like, I want that. I want to be loved like that. I want to give love like that.
And it's so interesting the way you describe it too, because it's what I feel too. If you talk to anybody that's been married for 30 plus years, it's never, ever, ever the case where somebody goes, why do you love that person? They go, well, they buy me nice stuff. And it's never, ever the case that they do these big, flashy, romantic things. Never. Every
Nope.
single person you will ever talk to that I have ever experienced that has been together for 30 plus years, it's always the little stuff. I like that when they walk by, they can't help but grab my hand. When they wake up, I love that they have to give me a kiss right away. And when I'm in my ugliest, I love that they still think I'm gorgeous. And it's not they're like making a big deal. They're just like, God, you're hot. Like,
Yeah.
it's those small, tiny moments that are very special and intimate that are only between you and that person that mean the most at the end of the day. And I think with social media, we've convinced ourselves it's the opposite, that it's the big, flashy delivery. It's like, no, it's like when I tell you I want to go this way, your support is as simple as, okay, babe, I trust you. That easy. Like,
Right.
from woman to man, like for a guy, that will fucking keep a dude content forever. Because
And
his
even if
entire
that direction
goal
was,
is to
yeah,
develop that trust.
right. And even if that direct decision ends up being something that wasn't the outcome that you guys were hoping for, you can still, like, give him the benefit of he made a decision. A lot of women are complaining like, "Oh my god, my guy never makes it. Just make a choice." You know? Well, you subvert that if you're always like, "Well, really? Are we really? We're really doing that?" No, just do it. And if it doesn't work out, then you adjust and you do it again. But you let your guy keep making those decisions because then he will step into that role and be those decision maker for the moments that are like, emergency and necessary, and for the moments that don't really matter. He made the decision. You made the decision to be with that man. So you're trusting him to be with that man. So then trust the decisions.
Yeah. And I see this a lot too, where you hear a lot of the complaints from women online, right? Because social media is effectively a hen circle echo chamber of just women complaining a lot of times, right? Which is,
well, anybody, guys too,
which is why we
people.
created the portal, is because we just don't want
Yes.
that negativity, right? And so one of the things that I hear a lot is, my man doesn't make decisions, but when he makes decisions, it's the wrong one. Well, that shows me already that the reason he doesn't make decisions is because you browbeat him every time he makes a decision, because he didn't do it your way. He didn't use your logic. Now, men and women's logic are vastly different. What we prioritize, vastly different. So when a man makes a decision, he's already gone through all of his logic wiring that he cares about. Now, after some time, men will start to embed logic pieces that they know would make their woman happy, right? Like, she's going to want to know that we're staying in a very specific place. She's going to want to know where we're driving to. She's going to want to know these things. So as we're processing that logic, our decision tree is now no longer just us going, we have an A, we have a B, we're good to go. Let's, all systems fire. Like, we're going to go, okay, well, I have my A and B, but she needs C through E. So I'm going to make sure to acquire C through E and then make that decision based on that. What ends up happening is, if you've been together a while and you make those decisions in that way, and men have made those decisions, women will then say, well, did you think about these things? Which, it isn't that he didn't think about those things. He doesn't want to have to explain it to you because he's already done it 3 times, checked his work to make sure that before he made the decision, it was exactly what you would want. And now you're subverting that decision by making him challenging him instead of going, listen, I trust you. Right.
Right.
And then over time, it teaches that man, well, I can't make a right decision for this person. Based on what I understand about this person, I can't make a right decision. Right. It would be the same way that, like, I see this, and I don't want it to seem like I'm beating on women. It's just my experience as a man. Right. Like, but I see the same thing where women do things for the house and the men want them to explain why they did those things. Like, shut the hell up, dude. That's not your space. She knows you. She knows what you're willing, like what your lines are, where your boundaries are, and she's making adjustments and changes, because if it was up to her, it would be all this way. But because you're there, it's mostly that way, but she has your elements in there. So just let it be. Right? Like my girl, she changes the house like every 5 days, and she's constantly apologizing for rearranging the house. The way that I approach that is like, that's fun for me. It's like, not at night when I stub my toe, because I'm the guy that, as a protector, I know how to walk through my house at night. But if I can't walk through my house, the robbers can't. So that works for me. That's the kind of like banter I give with my woman, because it's like, you are afraid I'm going to get upset that you change things around. For me, it just keeps it fresh. And that's not my space. That's your space. You do whatever you want to do with your space. I'll adapt. The same way that I don't want her coming out and mad at me because I'm working on the car. Why are you mad at me for working on the car? That's my space. I told you I got this space, right? And you know, fundamentally, what I just tell people is like, don't ever expect anything you're not willing to do for somebody else, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. Don't get mad if you would do that behavior, right? If you would be territorial over cars or garages or whatever, don't get mad when she's territorial about the house, the kids, the dogs, or like whatever, right? Like, it has to be equal in that regard. It has to be within the realm of equal respect of their ownership, their responsibility. I don't have a say in the house because I'm not the homemaker. She's the homemaker. I'm the fix shit, protect shit, and bring home money. That's my role. So if she comes to me and she says, hey, the car's broken, I'm going to be like, God damn it, you're always on my fucking ass about the cars. Blah, blah. Well, that means you're failing, bro, because your job is the car. If she's having to nag you about the car, then you're not doing your job. That's my soapbox about that stuff, because I hear a lot of guys bitch about their women nagging them, and it's like, well, did you do it? Well, no.
Right.
Well, then she's valid for nagging because you didn't do it.
And you already had an agreement that you would in some fashion. So.
And now you're breaking your own integrity, which makes you less of a man.
Your own integrity. Absolutely.
So, well, I appreciate that. I want to be respectful. We got 2 minutes left. Anything to add before we close it out, Tish?
No, I think we're good. We'll post some pictures of the event in the portal as soon as we figure out how to do that. But other than that, we'll figure out something for April. Maybe that Smash thing, the Smash.
Oh yeah, we keep talking about that.
Whatever. Yeah, we keep talking about it. So
yeah.
And weather will clear up.
How was the recipient honored?
How did we honor her?
Because I know you guys honored a specific person for that, right? How'd she receive?
Yeah. It? So it was ceremonial in the sense of like the beginning piece of when we gathered, we were building wreaths and things for our hair. So that was a chance for us to like break the space, because lots of conversation about, well, how do I do this exactly? I don't know. There's nothing right. There's no wrong. I mean, there's no wrong. So whatever you do is right. So we had that space to break it out, and then we gathered, then had some food. So we're all getting ready for sharing and opening up our energy. Had her sit in a circle, and then I bathed her feet as everybody went around the circle and gave her words of wisdom. Wasn't a dry eye in the room. So for about 45 minutes, you know, I'm trying to help everybody understand, like, crying is important. You know, we're trying to all hold it back. It's like, why? Like, there's a box of tissue in the middle of the floor because we expect everybody to be crying. So, you know, we went through quite a few tissue. We finished that. Then there was a ceremonial, her dumping the water that we washed her feet with, and then it's called a cradle. So we had her kind of like a trust fall, except they're not falling, they're just laying across everybody's lap. And so we had a song specially picked for her. So it was a quiet moment with the lights low of her being just cradled and loved, and everybody sharing hands on her while we were listening to the song and the words. And so it was beautiful. It was a chance to just honor her, but it's also a piece of like in giving and honoring this person who gives so much to her community, herself, that we honor ourselves. So it's as much about giving to her, but it's also about us reflecting in ourselves of like, there's love in the world. We can turn the lights off and have 2 minutes and 57 seconds worth of a song and just be back in a place of like white light love for ourselves, for other people, for our community, and walk away and be refreshed and loved. So it's as much as honoring her as it is then also just us receiving as well. And we can take that back to our families and be like, let me just love my partner a little better. Let me love my children a little better. So afterwards, Deborah and I, we were just sort of recanting and cleaning up, and everybody had left, and we were like, that went really well. That was amazing. And who can we do this for next? And we were trying to pick off names and events that are coming up that we could do this similar thing for other people. And then we both looked at each other like, I mean, like, you could do one for me and I could do one for you. And then, I want one too, So it was just a great moment. It was a great experience. So certainly, once Heroes Veritas is, big and rolling and we're on our plantation, we're on our land. I think
Yes, we're gonna have
plantation
vineyards.
has an actual, it has an actual square footage connotation to it. So maybe that was the universe downloading that for me. But that would be such an amazing thing to be able to like do this more often underneath of our living tree and like whatever. There's so many cool things that we could do. So, but in the meantime, we'll just pick people in our community and we'll do this more often. And it was really good. It was really good to have somebody who had no reason in her mind why she should be honored, and then had 12 people, including two messages that had been texted forward for her, people who couldn't make it, all sharing love about what this person does and for them or for the community, or the love and light that we see in this person. So it's just great to hear, like, there's 12 people supporting this woman. And if we actually gave ourselves credit, we could probably pull 12 people for ourselves. We just don't open ourselves up to that. Oh my God, I'm here by myself. I'm on my own island. Nobody loves me. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
No, you pull it together, you actually would have a circle of women who would be there for you.
Yeah. And again, if nothing else, like it's that energy exchange.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons that I was really excited that you guys were doing that, because I had a feeling that was what was going to happen. And you guys do all need to honor yourselves and have a community behind you that honors you. That's why Heroes was created, right? Those rituals. Yeah. I think we shy from them because they're awkward, right? Big emotions with random people it's awkward. But at the same time, it's awkward because we don't do it enough. But if you do it,
we don't do it enough.
And when you do it, the outcome is always the same, right? An absolute positive cathartic moment where you can see yourself in the person that's being honored, and in serving you are served. And that is why I thought that it was such a great idea that you guys did those things. And I'm really grateful that you guys had 12 people honor this person and it went as well as it did. And I'm excited for us to continue that. And yes, very much when we have our ranch, like that will be an awesome thing to do in a much more mystical way, because the space that we will occupy will be more mystical than, as much as room. Yeah,
as much as it looks really pretty,
as pretty as it is, it doesn't hold it doesn't have the grounded earth with it, and I think that's where we're going to really see that impact on the world.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful that you guys put that on, because to your point, as much fear and craziness and insanity that's been going on in the last decade, there's still love in the world, and we are still human, and it's about time we got back to that. So I'm really grateful you guys put that on.
Cool. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Great conversation as always, and I will get this uploaded as soon as I can.
Perfect. Have a good day. Everyone.